Hello, and depending where in the world you are, good to have you with us. Good afternoon or good morning. Today's webinar is on clean energy for corporate offtakers, from taking the first steps to building a global renewable energy strategy. My name is Ivo Brook, and I am the head of production at Green Power Global. It is a pleasure to welcome so many of you to today's webinar. Just to let you know a little bit about Green Power Global, it was founded in 2003 to accelerate the fight against global climate change through creating live events. These are commercial events that focus on connecting senior level decision makers. Together, we accelerate projects, spread best practice, and de-risk strategic decisions. Just so you are aware, today's session will be recorded and the link will be emailed to you shortly after the webinar is complete. So you will be able to listen again and share with your colleagues if you wish. Today's webinar takes place ahead of the first Corporate Energy Series USA, to be held at the Shelbourne South Beach, Miami on the 18th to 19th of November. The event will gather corporates and industrials, renewable energy project developers, utilities, banks, law and advisory firms to discuss the challenges and opportunities of sourcing and procuring of renewable electricity. Please do visit Corporate Energy Series USA for more information. Which brings me to today's webinar, Clean Energy for Corporate Offtakers, from taking the first step to building a global renewable energy strategy. Recent years have seen a convergence of increased public scrutiny of corporate carbon footprint and a steady decline in renewable energy costs, providing increased opportunities to develop economically viable sustainability targets. This trend is also no longer restricted to large multinational corporations, with both corporate off-takers and suppliers working to increase options for companies with diverse footprint and requirements. Indicative of the importance of this trend is that we have over 500 listeners from across the globe joining us for today's webinar. What then are the opportunities available for corporates in this rapidly evolving landscape? In today's webinar, we'll be covering the following: current state of the corporate off-taker landscape, the options available, how to set up achievable sustainability targets, establishing a renewable energy strategy, and developing a renewable strategy across regulatory jurisdictions. To cover this, I am very pleased to have with us Chiara Gilbert, Renewable Energy Portfolio Manager at South Pole, who will guide us through her research into this space. Chiara is an experienced renewable energy professional who manages South Pole's global project portfolio and supports corporate clients with their renewable energy strategies and voluntary reporting. She previously worked at CDP and primarily focused on the RE100 campaign, where she was a technical expert on helping large corporates make credible claims about their renewable energy sourcing and greenhouse gas reporting. Chiara has also been a leading contributor to comprehensive thought leadership reports on the uptake of corporate renewable energy worldwide. She holds a BA in Sustainable Development and Business Management from Columbia University in New York City. Following Chiara's presentation, we will have an opportunity for questions, which you can submit via the question box on the GoToWebinar bar to the right of your screen. We will try and get through as many relevant questions as possible in the hour time frame, but if we don't manage to get to yours, we will follow up where possible. And with that, I will now hand over to Chiara, and she will take it from here.
Thank you so much. I will now switch screens. Can I confirm that you can see my screen and hear me properly?
I can confirm that, yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you everyone so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Chiara Gilbert, and I work at South Pole, which is a leading sustainability and renewable energy solutions provider. I look forward to walking you through our discussion today on clean energy for corporate off-takers and how your company can take first steps to building a global renewable energy strategy. Perfect. So today we will be discussing the current state of the corporate off-taker landscape. We will discuss renewable energy sourcing solutions, as well as tailored strategies for global renewable sourcing, and lastly, South Pole's added value in all of this mix. So to get started, I'm going to be giving you a quick overview of the current state of the corporate off-taker landscape. In recent years, there's no question that there has been an increasing rise in corporate interest and corporate demand of renewable electricity. Every year, we hear new reports about how the volume of new RE purchases or RE capacity being added is record-breaking. We see it in the numbers, and we see it in the number of engaging companies. CDP has over 7,000 companies voluntarily reporting their environmental data related to climate, water, and forests. There are 193 members of RE100, which is part of the world's largest companies who have pledged to consume 100% renewable electricity by a target year. And lastly, there's 232 companies that have passed the very rigorous testing of a science-based target to keep in line with the 1.5 degree scenario. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, or IRENA, corporates are consuming 465 terawatt hours of renewable electricity, and they're doing it through a variety of mechanisms that we will be discussing today. In the last 3 to 4 years, you can see a very large increase in the number of corporates making commitments to these climate campaigns, signaling that more and more corporates are choosing to set measurable goals, track progress, and make public commitments to reducing their emissions. 63% of Fortune 100 companies have set at least one clean energy target, and that is significant. It sends important signals to the market about what companies need to be doing to take responsibility for their emissions. Making public commitments are not the only driver for sustainability targets. They also include CSR objectives, and renewables are also a way for companies to reduce their energy costs. 80% of RE100 members cite falling costs as a driver. You can see in the chart that wind costs have dropped by 69% and solar PV costs have dropped by 88% from 2008 to 2018. And other reasons corporates feel the business case for renewable sourcing is strong include achieving long-term price security. So it makes business sense in more and more jurisdictions to get PPAs and on-site to capitalize on falling costs and to insulate against price volatility. Also hedging against increasing fossil fuel prices from carbon markets or taxes. And lastly, increasing regulatory requirements. An important takeaway from all of this is that corporates can and are helping to drive the energy transition. The aggregated demand of RE100 members alone represent the size of a mid-sized country, such as Thailand or Egypt. But more action is needed if we are going to meet the requirements of the Paris Agreement. So now we can switch our focus to the various mechanisms through which companies can source renewables. There are many ways through which a company can reduce their emissions, and the mechanisms available also depend on which scope the company is trying to reduce. For Scope 1 emissions, which are direct emissions from combusted fuels, solutions include on-site renewables, energy efficiency, carbon credits, eco-gas and biogas certificates. For Scope 2 emissions, which are indirect but within a company, the solutions include on-site renewables, PPAs, and energy attribute certificates. These are the primary solutions that we will be focusing on today. Lastly, for Scope 3 emissions, which are, oh, I got some feedback there. Hopefully that's okay. Okay, so Scope 3 emissions are indirect, but they exist outside of an organization's direct control, and they're either upstream or downstream to a business's operations. Solutions in this scope include energy efficiency, water efficiency, reduced deforestation, and carbon credits. Understanding these options and the differences among them is very important. Equally important is understanding the kinds of claims your organization can make about the action it is taking. For example, a claim about being carbon neutral through purchasing carbon credits is very different than being 100% renewable through sourcing renewable energy certificates or on-site renewables, for example. And the main takeaway is that it is important to be fully transparent about what your organization is doing. So now we can go a bit more in depth to each of the options listed specifically on Scope 2 solutions. What is an EAC and how does it work? So an EAC means an Energy Attribute Certificate. There's different terms that are used. So perhaps you've heard REC. If you're in Europe, perhaps you've heard GEO. I'll be getting into all of those different abbreviations shortly. But the main point is that an EAC compromises all of those things, and it represents 1 megawatt hour of renewable electricity. EACs allow the consumer to claim the environmental attributes and thereby claim renewable electricity consumption. So for reporting organizations such as CDP and RE100, they recognize EACs as a means of lowering your emissions. They do not require high upfront investments, and companies also benefit from flexible contract durations and lower risks. They are very easy and quick to be deployed, so they are commonly used for companies to meet targets in a credible, internationally recognized and reportable way. As a tracking instrument, an EAC allows you to know the energy source, whether it's coming from wind, solar, biomass, the age of the generator, and the geographical location. So where EACs are available globally, ERCs are called different names in different markets. In Europe, they're called the Guarantee of Origin, or GOs. In US, they're called RECs, short for Renewable Energy Certificates. And there are also various national schemes and international standards, such as the IREC standard, which allows certificates to be available in various international markets. You can see in this map here in dark blue, those are the international markets where IRECs are available. In light blue, it signals that IRECs are not currently available in those countries, but it is possible that they will be in the future. And Russia is in gray because it has indicated that it does not want to be a part of the IREC standard because it's developing its own scheme, hopefully. Lastly, on EACs, there are premiums that can be purchased with the EAC that allow the consumer to make additional choices about the renewable energy it's sourcing. Labels allow companies to make claims about additional impacts, which can include social benefits and addressing various sustainable development goals, or SDGs. And they can also allow for additional environmental safeguards associated with their purchase. So these are premium products, premium EACs. Moving focus to the next renewable solution is a focus on corporate PPAs, which I won't go deeply into, but the most important things to take away from PPAs are that they are power purchase agreements between a generator and a business, where the business agrees to buy power generated from an RE project at an agreed price for a fixed period, and that is typically around 10 to 15 years. The availability of PPAs varies greatly across countries and regulatory jurisdictions. And there are two common types of PPAs, and those are a physical and a virtual PPA. The most simplistic way to describe the difference between them is that in a physical PPA, you're buying the electricity you're going to consume on the grid, even if you're not actually connected to that asset. Whereas in a virtual PPA, it is simply a financial instrument where no power is exchanged. So this is a contract purely for the associated EACs coming as a result of this deal. And this has become increasingly popular in the US in the last years. So the next solution is on-site renewables. With on-site renewables, which are typically solar PVs located on the rooftop or on an adjacent land connected with a private wire. In this setup, a buyer will agree to purchase the power generated from a project at an agreed price over a fixed period. Again, typical agreements are for 10 to 15 years to secure funding for the generator to build the project. Through this mechanism, companies can reduce both their environmental footprint and also their energy costs. So now that we've gone through an overview of the different solutions, we can discuss the different strategies that companies can deploy for their renewable sourcing and the different elements that are important to consider when coming up with a renewable energy strategy. So when making a decision about what sourcing solution is best for your company, it is important to consider the advantages and considerations of different solutions. Quickly, a green tariff, which we didn't discuss previously in detail, because it is simply when the utility bundles both the physical power the consumer is purchasing alongside the EACs in a tariff that the consumer pays for. So between these four options, the benefits to both green tariffs and EACs is that they require minimal administration, they're available immediately, and they're cost-efficient solutions. This makes them an easy solution for companies wanting to get involved in the renewables market quickly. But the considerations include exposure to wholesale market risk, questions around additionality, and typically not being able to be plant or technology specific. Green tariffs specifically are also limited in terms of availability across different countries. For both corporate PPAs and on-site solutions, the advantages are that they are both long-term energy price hedges and can result in possible long-term cost savings. With on-site construction, it also means that capacity is always being added. But some considerations include the high transaction costs, the high effort for internal buy-in. Risk management is also important to take into consideration, as is the fact that they're both long-term commitments. So all of these reasons are why it's important to consider your business's position when making different decisions around which solution is most appropriate. And in a little bit, we'll be discussing the different internal and external factors to consider when you're evaluating your options as well. Just as a reference, now that we've gone over all of the different options and how companies are deploying them, this comes from E100 Data, and it shows the most common ways that companies are sourcing renewables. You can see a significant jump in corporate PPAs between 2015 and 2016, but consistently across all years, unbundled EACs tend to be the most common way that companies are sourcing renewable electricity. When crafting solutions, it is also important to combine them to meet targets, and this allows you to diversify the risks in your portfolio. And I think that this breakdown is representative of the different advantages and considerations that we've just discussed. So when implementing an effective renewable energy strategy, it's important to go through each of these stages to ensure that you're achieving all of your goals in a way that best suits your company. So firstly, it's important to baseline your company's greenhouse gas footprint and map the material risks to your business. So understanding where your company is at is, of course, the first place to start. Defining a strategy that will allow your company to embrace climate leadership as an opportunity is an important next step. And after there's internal agreement about a strategy, it's important to set targets and pathways. And this will help you achieve the goals. Some ways to set targets, of course, include joining RE100 or setting a science-based target. Next would be mitigating and adapting risks and actually implementation through renewable energy consumption and emission reduction. And on a yearly basis, disclosing and monitoring data is important to see the improvements and see what work still needs to be done. And lastly, advocating for how to innovate and collaborate with others, including your peers and your customers, is a way to elevate your position as a climate leader and engage others to begin doing so. So designing a renewable energy roadmap is very important, and a roadmap is typically one that evolves with time so that it's easier for your organization to adapt. Implementing the easiest and quickest solutions, you can see in the dark blue, such as through unbundled EACs and green tariffs, allows companies to quickly reach their goals and with time begin exploring other opportunities that make the most sense for them. It's important to establish your company's goals to address your company's desired outcomes, the targets and risk appetite of your company, to have an understanding of volumes at the different locations, and also realistic renewable energy options for the different regions. Also realistic timelines on which all of this can take place. It is also crucial to evaluate the options. You can, with time, evaluate lease contracts, tariffs, and load variance in each country. And this can help you prioritize countries that you may consider to implement different solutions in. And then from there, you can identify preferred technologies, sizes of projects, the percentage of ownership or offtake your company is willing to commit to. And from here, implement the most appropriate solutions from your company, for your company. So it's very much a journey, and it's one that can evolve with time. So now that we have assessed the basics of a roadmap, we can discuss, we can discuss how South Pole is equipped to help your company. So we can help you identify the most suitable RE solutions by region to assess the different options and rank them against feasibility, timeframes, and investment options. We, importantly, when evaluating your company, and consider the internal factors, which can guide the kinds of options that are available to you at a certain time. So these internal factors include the size and the scope of your electricity needs. They include the geographical spread and land availability of where you have operations, your company's capital investment capacity, as well as risk appetite. And we can help you prioritize regionally across the EU, Asia, Africa, and the US, and come up with a tailored energy procurement strategy for your needs. Our services also deliver on the external factors that must be considered when you're making renewable decisions in a market. And this can include the regulatory landscape, the market infrastructure, market stability, market liquidity, and available financing mechanisms. So here are the different options that we've discussed and the different elements that are important to consider when choosing which is best for you. So we can skip over to this. Sorry. So yes, at South Pole we have over 13 years of experience in enabling corporates, capital markets, and the public sector to mitigate risks and create value on their sustainability journey. South Pole began as a company focusing on carbon credits and is now one of the largest carbon project developers in the world. But it has also grown to focus on other areas, such as advising on renewable energy strategies and supplying renewable energy solutions. We have a staff of over 300 employees in over 18 offices worldwide, and our employees and partners give us the on-the-ground access to over 40 countries, ensuring that we have the local knowledge to find solutions and minimize risks wherever you need to source renewables. Some of the 200 plus projects that we've developed alone alongside many partners. And this is why our global network is so strong, and we know the most suitable project partners in countries to help you with your renewable energy needs. So at South Pole, we can help companies source renewable energy efficiently and credibly worldwide in order to save money, meet public commitments, and demonstrate leadership through our solutions. We offer advisory on renewable energy procurement strategies. We can support the sourcing of PPAs and on-site solutions. And we can offer EACs in national and international markets. Lastly, we can provide solutions tailored to the preferences on location, technology, and costs. And these are some of the biggest brands that South Pole has worked with globally since it was founded in 2006. And we have the expertise to help guide these companies in making the correct renewable energy decisions based on where they have operations. So with that, I can conclude this overview of the different solutions and important considerations when implementing a renewable energy roadmap. And I'm very happy to take any questions that you may have so that we may further assist you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara. And just aware that there were a few comments earlier on about about some people having problems with the audio. Just a reminder, if that is the case, hopefully it's solved now. We are recording this and we'll circulate afterwards. I have a feeling it was more my side than you, Chiara, so apologise for anyone who missed anything at the very start there. We have got a few questions coming in, so we will run through them as we can. I think the first one that came in, we'll start from the top and run through them in order. Someone asking about the difference between Scope 1 or Scope 2 for on-site renewables in terms of the differentiation there.
Okay, perfect. I can get to that. Is it possible for me to see the questions as well from the panel that I have, or will you just be reading them out loud, just out of curiosity?
It should be possible for you to find them in the drop-down menu on the right of your screen.
Okay, it's not popping up, but that's okay. I'm happy to just take them verbally. So, yes, a Scope 1 emission is a direct emission that comes from the combustion of fuel. So companies, for example, let's say there's a trucking company. They would primarily have Scope 1 emissions because they're burning a fuel to power their fleets. So their Scope 1 emissions, since it's an actual fuel being combusted and thereby emitting an emission, whereas a Scope 2 emission is an indirect emission. So even if a company is not directly burning that fuel, it is benefiting and using the result of that fuel being burnt. So for example, office spaces that may be consuming locally from the grid. An office isn't burning its own burning a fuel for electricity, but rather the energy company is burning it. So a Scope 2 emission is one in which a company is responsible for those emissions, even though it is not directly burning for that electricity. So that's a Scope 2. I can go back to the slides actually to further. And then lastly, a Scope 3 emission is one that exists outside of the organization's direct control. Wait, sorry. Oh yeah, this one. So this could be, here you can see, oh, this is perfect. So in a Scope 1 emission, it could be company-owned vehicles, buildings, or fossil fuels being burned on site. In a Scope 2 emission, it's the purchased electricity or gas. And in a Scope 3 emission, it is related to, upstream emissions or downstream emissions, based on the emissions of your supplier or the materials that you need for your own business, but it's outside of your organization's direct operations. And so those are the scope solution, or sorry, the different scopes. And on-site is simply a way for a company to, to generate its own electricity and thereby consume renewable electricity. It's one of the solutions to the scopes rather than being separate on its own. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. If you have any more questions on that, feel free to send them through.
Next up, a question on EACs, possible candidates for blockchain instruments. Is that something that you see happening?
Oh, that's an interesting question. It is. I remember going to different events 3 years ago when that was kind of tossed out as an abstract idea. And I think in the last 3 years specifically, it's really evolved to be something that is more seriously being considered and also, I think, soon to be implemented. I've definitely seen news where there's different organizations that are coming up with platforms where EACs can be traded through these platforms. And so I do think that it's going to become a more relevant technology and soon to be implemented, yes.
Question next on off-takers' location relative to renewable energy assets. Off-takers do not need to be in the same geography, service area as the RE asset. Is this always the case, or is it dependent on the geographical region?
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear you very clearly. Could you repeat the question?
Apologies. Off-takers do not need to be in the same geography/service area as the renewable asset. Is this always possible, or is it dependent on region? And this in relation to PPA.
Yeah, that's a good question. I will refer to another slide. So the short answer is no, they don't always need to be in the same geographical region, but it really depends on what organization, for example, is a company interested in reporting to CDP? Is it interested in reporting to RE100, or is it interested in reporting to even a different framework? Because different reporting standards have different rules with regards to this. So, for example, Europe is a single market. You can see in yellow, they're all united under the European Guarantees of Origin. So companies can be, for example, located in the UK, or maybe that's not a good example. Companies can be located in Germany and be sourcing renewable electricity attributes in the form of GEOs from another European country, such as the Netherlands. And so because Europe is united under this single market, companies can trade across these different countries. So in this way, yes, you don't have to be located in the same geographic region as where you have consumption, but that's the case for Europe. It's a similar case for North America between the US and Canada. And when you move outside of those two single markets, things do become a bit more complicated depending on who you're reporting to. So, for example, RE100 has a more strict interpretation of what represents a market. And so companies shouldn't typically be consuming renewable electricity outside of the country where they have that consumption. Whereas, it really varies on the reporting standard in which you're adhering to. And, it's another reason why it's important to have trusted advisors who can give you the best advice when you're looking to source for your international operations.
Thank you. Follow-up question on PPAs. What are the most common structures for synthetic PPAs?
What are the most common structures? So I think that in the US, there's been a rise in virtual PPAs and synthetic PPAs being a very common PPA structure as opposed to a physical PPA. That is not the same in Europe because of the regulatory structures. So yes, I think it varies significantly by market, and then if you're outside of North America and outside of Europe, then it changes even more so because it's very country dependent. So I think, yeah, it just varies by market, but synthetic PPAs have certainly been on the rise in the US.
We've had quite a few questions actually on South Pole's own service provision as well, particularly with a view to Latin America and South America across a few countries. In terms of your own work for that region, how involved have South Pole been?
Yeah, so South Pole has offices in 18 countries worldwide. and we have multiple offices in Latin America. We have a lot of people on the ground in Latin America, actually, specifically. And so one of the benefits of working with a company like South Pole is because of our geographic spread, we can really provide solutions and people on the ground worldwide. We have many partners throughout the world as well. So we have direct access to these countries and people in these countries all over the world. I guess that's kind of a general statement. If there's more specific questions in terms of the services we offer, I can dive more deeply into that. But yes, we have multiple offices in Latin America.
Excellent. And again, kind of following up on kind of your own work there, a number of people have mentioned being keen to get in touch with you directly if they want to do so. What
Yes, so I have my email listed here. So I would be very happy for anyone to email me directly, and I can direct you to the most appropriate person within the organization. We are very spread out, so I think it would make sense to contact me, and then I can send you to the right person based on the team that you'd like to work with and also the country in which you are interested in.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chiara. I think on that, really, that's the bulk of our questions covered. A lot of interest, though, on your own market coverage, particularly with a view to the Latin America, South America market. But I think that wraps us up for today. So thank you very much, Chiara. It was a great presentation, a lot of insight there, and I'm sure a lot of people will be in touch with you directly for some of those more detailed market-specific questions. As mentioned, this is part of the lead-up to our CES Corporate Energy Series USA and Latin America conferences, which will be held in Miami on the 18th and 21st of November. So do visit the two websites, Corporate Energy Series USA and Corporate Energy Series Latin America, for more details. But thank you all for joining us, and look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.